وحبيبنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. So what we did last time is we went through the pillars of Salah, right? And Imam Abu Shuja counted 18 pillars of Salah, and we talked about what those pillars mean. What they mean is that if you forget them by accident, then you need to go back and repeat the pillar that you forgot. If enough time has passed, meaning it's not the last thing that you did, then you would need to repeat the rak'ah at the end altogether. If you leave them on purpose, then your salah is invalid immediately. Now what I'm going to do before we start talking about the next section within the Shafi'i madhab, because I talked about the first tashahhud yesterday because I felt everyone wanted to ask the question. So I answered it before it was asked. But now I have to explain to you the difference of categorization regarding the different madhahib when it comes to prayer actions. Can you move out of the way? Thank you. So, for the Shafi'iyya and the Hanabila and the Hanafiyya, we're going to leave the Malikiyya out for now. We'll talk about them when they come because it's a bit different. But for them, they use different terminology. So the Shafi'iyya will call it arkan. Hanabila will also call it arkan. Hanafiya will call it furud. So the Shafi'iyya and Hanabila will call it arkan. So pillars, and Hanafiya will call it furud. Shafi'iyya after that will call the second thing will be sunan. The Hanabila will call it wajibat, and the Hanafiya will call it wajibat. Okay, and then after that the Shafi'iyya call hay'ah, what the Hanabila called sunan, and the Hanafiya called sunan. Right? So these are equal to one another if you are to study the terminology. But now you can understand how things become very confusing if you don't know. If you don't know exactly what is it that they're talking about. So you may study sunan for Shafi'iyya, but this is what it represents for the Hanabila. They're very different. And what I mean by they're the same, I don't mean the exact same things. What I mean is that they deal with them in the same way. Meaning that if you are to leave a rukn for the Shafi'iyya, a rukn for the Hanabila, a fard for the Hanafiyya, by mistake, then you have to go back and do it again or repeat the rak'ah. If you leave it on purpose, you lose the salah altogether. For the Shafi'i, the same thing happens in this way. So Hanafi, a wajib for the Hanafiyya and a wajib for the Hanabila, if you forget it, then you don't have to go back to it, you just do sujood as-sahw. The same thing happens with the sunan for the Shafi'i, even though they're different things, but anything that Shafi'i calls sunan, that's what they'll deal with it the same way the Hanabila and the Hanafiya deal with the wajibat. And then hay'a sunan means if you leave it, it doesn't matter, and if you do it, then you get ajr. But that difference of terminology, maybe you guys can come this way a bit so you can see what I'm writing here, because it's important for you to understand. This difference of terminology is why when you're studying the different kutub of fiqh, you could become a bit confused. So does that make sense? So if you're studying, depending on what type of book of fiqh you're studying, they'll use different terminology. I left out the Malikiyya on purpose. We'll come to that inshallah a different time because it's a bit different. Can someone get me a tissue? All right. So what we, sorry? Yeah. So what we did so far is we studied the arkan for the Shafi'iyya. All right. Now we're going to study the next part, which is sunan. Now, when I talked about tashahhud al-awwal, when I talked about the first tashahhud exists over here for all three. Sorry. The first tashahhud is over here. So it's a wajib for the Hanafiyya, wajib for the Hanabila, and a sunnah for the Shafi'iyya. But it's dealt with in the exact same way. Meaning that what I told you last time, when you get up, if you're standing up and you remember you lost the first tashahhud, you can't go back down again. That is for all the madhahib. Even though they have different names, but they deal with it in the same way. What is the difference? It's terminology. It's just a difference of terminology. As they say, لا مشاحة في الاصطلاح. I mean, there's no problem when it comes for istilahat. When we give terminology to something, it's just what people decide to call something. It's not a big deal. Does that make sense? And then we'll leave the Malikiyya's categorization. They're very similar to the Hanafi in most things, but I just want to, for the Hanabila, sorry, most things, but there are certain differences that we'll leave. And I think you know that they have certain, ways of looking at stuff. Okay. So in the first tashahhud, if you are to stand up instead of sitting down and you're fully standing up, then you don't go back again, because that you're in a rukn. And if you go from a rukn to a wajib or to a sunnah, then you lose your prayer, because you're going for something more that has higher priority to something that has lesser priority, and that invalidates your prayer. All right. But for the Shafi'iyya, the actual sitting has a different name. It's called sunnah at the time, right? And then hay'ah is what the Shafi'iyya mean by sunnah. And what now are they the same? Meaning, are the sunan of the Shafi'iyya the same as the wajibat of the Hanabil and the same of the wajibat of Hanafiya? In the way they deal with them, yes, but they're not the same list. Meaning, certain actions will be a wajib here, and then something less here, or something higher there. And I'll give you examples as we go along, inshallah. As long as you understood the little table that I drew for you. All right. So be patient. We'll come across, inshallah, everything, and I'll give you the examples, inshallah. We'll come across that specifically, and we'll talk about it. Now, where we are in the matn is when the Imam Abu Shuja is saying وَسُنَنُهَا. Now he's talking about the sunan of salah, which are what he means by that are wajibat. If he was a Hanbali or Hanafi or even a Maliki scholar, he means wajibat, meaning something that if you leave on purpose, you lose your prayer, but if you leave by mistake, then you have to just do sujood sahu at the end of it. Now, adding to that, one final piece of information before we continue is that sujood sahu is a sunnah for the Shafi'iyya anyway. The Shafi'iyya see the act of sujood sahu as sunnah. So if you leave tashahhud al-awwal, you stand up, you don't go back to it, but you have to do sujood sahu. You have to do sujood sahu for the Hanabila, Malikiyya and Hanafiyya. But for the Shafi'iyya, it's a sunnah to do sujood sahu. So if you don't do sujood sahu, you're fine. You just continue, you go on, you don't have to do it. Is that understood? So the concept of sujood sahu for the Shafi'iyya is that it's recommended action. It's a recommended action. If you don't do it, your salah is still fine. But for the rest of the schools of thought, no, you have to do it. At least for the prominent position within those schools of thought. There's also difference of opinion within the schools themselves. Yes?
If you make a mistake, you just have to acknowledge it and then move on?
So it depends on what mistake you make, right? So that's what I'm trying to explain to you. That if you forget a rukn, you have to go back and do it, and then you do sujood sahu at the end. But the concept of sujood sahu, the two sajda of sahu, at the end of prayer, for the Shafi'iyya is a sunnah to begin with. So if you don't do it at all, they're fine. You should do it, but if you don't do it, you're fine. Does that make sense? So that's how and that's why the Shafi'iyya don't have wajibat, they have sunan. Because how do you make up for a sunnah if you forget it for them? You do sujood sahu. Well, sujood sahu is a sunnah anyway. Right? So they just call everything a sunnah, because for them, if you don't do it, if you stand up and you don't do tashahhud al-awwal, for the Shafi'iyya, if you just continue normally and don't do anything, you're totally fine. As long as you did it by forgetfulness, not on purpose. Is that too confusing, or did I make? Again, I'm trying not to go into too much comparative fiqh, because then it'll become just too much information that is hard to deal with. Yes.
Just wanted to recall. So you said for the arkan, it's sunnah also for the sujood sahu, even in
yes. The concept of sujood sahu is a sunnah for the Shafi'iyya all in all. Yeah, all in all. So sunan as-salah.
Yeah.
Right? Sunan as-salah for the Shafi'iyya equal the concept of wajibat for the Hanabila and Hanafiyya and Malikiyya. Means something that if you leave on purpose, you lose your prayer, but if you leave by mistake, then you just make up with sujood sahu, you don't go back to it. Alright, that's what sunan as-salah for Shafi'iyya is. What are they? وَسُنَنُهَا قَبْلَ الدُّخُولِ فِيهَا شَيْئًا. So there's sunan before prayer, and of course this doesn't apply to the sunnahs that happen before prayer. It applies to the things that happen after prayer. What are the sunan before prayer? Al-adhanu wal-iqamah. Making adhan and making iqamah. Now, I'm going to explain to you this once, so that I've went through it. Adhan and iqamah. So for the Hanafiyya, for the Malikiyya, for the Shafi'iyya, and for the Hanabila. I'm going to explain it just so that you know the information regarding this, because it's important. So for the Shafi'iyya, you do something called at-tarji' wa tarbi' at-takbir. So tarji' there's where this is something that actually happens in Salah, is when you're done doing ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, ashhadu anna Muhammadar Rasulullah, you do it again. So ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, ashhadu anna Muhammadar Rasulullah, ashhadu anna Muhammadar Rasulullah, and then you do them again, and that's called tarji'. And now we don't do that. That's not the norm today anymore. People stick to they stick to what the Hanbali and Hanafi do. So the Hanabila and the Hanafiya do the same thing here. So we all do that. But the Shafi'i and the Maliki have a different opinions on when it comes to adhan. For the Shafi'i, they have something called tarji', so repetition. And the concept here is that after you do the shahadatain, you do them after that. You do them again. So you do them twice. Once with a loud voice and one with a lower voice. And you do tarbi' at-takbir, which is doing four takbirs at the beginning. So how do we make adhan? Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, right? And then ashhadu an la. So that's 4 times, okay? And that's how the Shafi'i do. So if you were to do adhan and the Shafi'i, then you would do Allahu Akbar 4 times, like I said, and then you would say ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah, ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah, and then you say that again, ashhadu an la ilaha, and then you do hayya al salati, hayya al salah, hayya al falah, hayya al falah. All right? So that's how the Shafi'i do it. Now the Malikiyya, they also do tarji', so they do the repetition as well that I explained to you. I know you've probably never heard of tarji' before, but that is what how they do it. There are different ahadith that exist. There's the narration of Bilal radiallahu anhu, and there's the narration of Abu Mahdura, the Sahabi, and it was narrated in different ways. So and that's why there's different evidence to support it. And tathniyatu takbir.
Just for the
2 takbirs, just for the shahadatain, just for doing the shahada. For Malikiyya, they do tarji', but they only do two takbirs at the beginning of the adhan. So Allahu Akbar, and then ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah, ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah, and then again ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, ashhadu an la twice. So that's how the Malikiyya do it. Now the Hanafi and the Hanabila have the exact same way, which is the way that we know. What is the way that we know? La tarji', so no repetition. And tarbi' at-takbir, 4 takbirs. So no tarji', meaning after you say ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah, ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah, you don't do them again with a lower voice or a higher voice. You don't do one low and one high. You just keep it like that, and you do 4 takbirs at the beginning. So Hanafiya and Hanabila are the same thing. They have the same opinion, but there are 2 other opinions regarding how the adhan is going to be done.
There's a line that I heard was available that
Yeah. Well, that's for Shia. Yeah, that's different. Yeah.
They said that
Ibadiyya, yeah. No.
No, they took it out.
Yeah, so we don't have that, yeah. So here, just to make it easy, Shafi'iyya and Hanabila are one thing. And then Hanafiyya, the Maliki. Does that make sense? So over there, I know this is a bit, I just wanted to make sure that this is clear. So if you ever hear it before, so if you ever go to another country, if someone does it, you don't freak out, because sometimes you find people lose their minds when they hear something that's a bit different. So al-ifrad illa qad qamat. So ifrad is once, doing everything once, except qad qamat as-salah. So the Shafi'i and the Hanabila is the way that we do, the iqamah. Everything once, right? Everything once, Allahu Akbar, as in it's one verse, because we usually have 2 of them. And then everything just once, except qad qamat as-salah, you do it twice. All right? Now, Imam Malik, al-ifrad mutlaqan, meaning everything is done once. So even qad qamat as-salah, it's only done once. حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله. That's how Imam Malik sees it. حنفية التثنية مطلقا. Twice for everything. Right? Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah, ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah, hayya ala salati, hayya ala salah, hayya ala falah, hayya ala falah, qad qamat as-salah, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, la ilaha illallah. Or without the repetition of hayya ala salah twice, or without the meaning within the Hanafi madhab, there's a bit of variations. So if you hear someone making iqamah, and instead of doing ashhadu an la ilaha illallah once, doing twice, calm down, take a deep breath, and remind yourself that that's the Hanafi way of doing it, and that's fine. It's just a way of, it's just an opinion that exists in how to do the. Now, what is the common denominator for us in the way that we do it? Who's the common denominator for us? Based on how we do adhan and how we do iqamah? No, Hanbali. The Hanabila, because لا ترجيع, تربيع التكبير, that's what we do. No tarjih, we don't repeat the shahadatain twice, and we do 4 takbirat. And the iqama is ifrad except iqama salah. So what keeps us the way that we do adhan and iqama is the Hanbali way of doing it. Yeah, but there are other ways to do it. Does that make sense? Are we okay so far? So yeah, so if you go, depending on what countries you go to, you may find different ways of adhan, and these are all Sunni ways, and they're all based on evidence that exists within the Quran, within the Sunnah, and it's fine. Like if you choose to do it in a different way. Yes.
So just for the Hanafi one again, it's double what's in the adhan. Like
here?
Yeah, when you said it's double.
It's like this is like the
Yeah, so just like the adhan.
Exactly the same.
Yeah, just adding قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة.
And then the exact number of
Yeah, exactly. So تثنية مطلقا.
I heard this call here.
Yeah, so if it happens, it's fine. It's just that there's different ways of looking at it. Does that make sense so far? No, we do Hanabila and we do Hanabila adhan and iqama. And it's fine. And if the case here was that you were making adhan for the Shafi'i way and doing iqama in the Maliki way, that's fine. It doesn't really make a difference. But what we do here is the common denominator is the Hanabila. So we are doing the adhan and iqama follow the Hanbali way. But here the Hanabila and the Hanafiya are together, and here the Hanabila and the Shafi'i are together. Right? So.
Is there anything that the person who does adhan should be the person who does iqama?
It is masnoon, meaning it is recommended for that to be the case, but it doesn't have to be. And that's not a problem at all. Again, these are all things that have very little evidence to support them, and it doesn't really make a difference. But yeah, it's better if the person do adhan to do iqama as well, because that's how the Sahaba did it during the Prophet ﷺ's life.
The mu'adhin has to have wudu to make adhan?
It's sunnah to make wudu as well, to make adhan.
To make adhan?
Yeah, it's masnoon to make wudu, but if you don't have wudu, your adhan is still acceptable, at least for the better part of opinions that exist. Are we good?
Did you say that the Hanabila and the Shafi'iyya match?
So for the iqama, the Shafi'iyya and the Hanabila match, and for adhan, the Hanabila and the Hanafiya match. So if I were to take, to be a bit smarter in the way I did this in the beginning, I would have just put Hanafiya over here, right? And then we have that's probably how it should look. I wasn't thinking at the beginning. Okay, so this is the breakdown of adhan and iqama. Yes.
Leading a prayer and you have your son standing beside you, and he does not make wudu before. So can he still say iqama?
Yes. Yes.
Without the wudu, he can.
Yeah. Of course, there are difference of opinions regarding whether you have to have wudu for adhan or iqama, but because there's difference of opinion in the matter, then I think it's permissible.
Can the imam give iqama himself?
Yes.
Individual people praying and they're giving iqama and then leading the prayer.
Yeah, so doing iqama yourself is also, again, there's a lack of strict rules on these issues, because we don't have, meaning the Prophet ﷺ did not specify specific things in a strict manner. So when it comes, yes, go ahead.
I was going to ask, because we know that Aisha led other women in prayer. Somebody asked me at the school I work at about a female doing the iqama. For her doing it just for females, do we have anything like that? And
they can do adhan and iqama.
Yeah. So
Yes.
we would just say based on the fact that usually whatever applies to a male applies to a female.
Definitely.
Not based on a separate hadith, but
No.
based on that.
Yeah, exactly. Just drawing a parallel. So whatever men do in groups, the women can do. They can do adhan, they can do iqama, and the whole thing when it comes to salah.
Is that like the Jamhur? Or?
Yeah, that's the Jumhur's ra'i on this mas'ala. Yeah. Okay, so there's a difference of opinion regarding the age that is required for adhan and iqama, and the status of purity, religious purity, with having wudu or not. But because there's difference of opinion, I'm okay with people who, I have no problem with you making adhan or iqama without wudu. But the thing is, it's probably a bit more it's a bit more recommended for someone older to do iqama, specifically because usually the people who do iqama should be praying with you. So, and if he's majar alayhi al-qalam, so it's not about having wudu or not having wudu. Is this person religiously accountable or not? Meaning, is this person that's doing adhan iqama religiously accountable yet, or are they still not religiously accountable? Because they're not religiously accountable, it doesn't matter if they pray with wudu or not without wudu, right? So it doesn't make a difference because they're not, unless they're going to actually lead the prayer, which in that case it does make a difference. So again, there's a lot of difference of opinion regarding these issues, because there's a lack of strict rulings that addresses them to begin with. Okay, so I know that some people have a lot of difficulty when kids make adhan and kids make iqama, but there really shouldn't be, because there's a really lack of evidence to say yes or no to any of this stuff. Okay. So that's the two sunnahs that exist for salah for the Shafi'iyya before entering the salah. So this is before we enter the salah, obviously. Now after salah, if you were to continue, وَبَعْدَ الدُّخُولِ فِيهَا شَيْئًا, and after entering the salah, there's only two things that the Shafi'iyya see as sunnah, because their definition of sunnah is what the definition of wajib is for the Hanabil and the Hanafiya. Again, remember that part. So only two things. The first thing is at-tashahhud al-awwal. So the first tashahhud. And that's why last time I explained it to you and I told you it was a wajib, because that's what the jamhur of the ulama call it. The Shafi'iyya call it the sunnah, but they apply to it the exact same ruling that applies to, that everyone else applies to it, with no difference. It's just a difference of terminology that they're using regarding the action. So the first tashahhud, like I explained last time, exactly the same thing. If you stand up, you should have made tashahhud, but you didn't. You stood up and you're completely standing up, then you don't go back to it. You can only go back to it if you're not fully standing up yet, right? But if you're up, khalas, you just make sujood sahw at the end, and then doing sujood sahw is sunnah anyway. So if you don't do it for the Shafi'i, your salah is fine. So if you forget to do it, you don't have to go back and do it. For other madhahib, you can go back and do it with a separate takbir, do the two sujood and then do taslim at the end of it. But that's a different story. All right. The second one is al-qunutu wal-qunutu fi as-subh, and performing qunut in fajr. وفي الوتر في النصف الثاني من شهر رمضان, in Fajr and in Witr during Ramadan, during the second half of Ramadan. Sorry, that's a better way to do it. Second half of Ramadan. Alright, so for the Shafi'iyya, there's two sunnahs in prayer. One is Tashahhud al-Awwal, we covered that last time, we explained how that works. Now, Qunut is making dua. The Shafi'iyya make dua after ruku'. The Maliki are the ones who do it before ruku', but everyone else does it after ruku'. Okay. Now, qunut in fajr for the Shafi'iyya is a sunnah. If you leave it on purpose, that's to them a problem, because the salah can be invalidated with a difference of opinion. And if you leave it by forgetting it, then you would have to repeat. You have to do sujood sahw. But that's and that is what the Shafi'iyya see. And that's انفردوا بذلك عن الجمهور. I mean, they see that on their own. They're the only group that actually see that. The Malikiyya see it, but they see it before ruku'. So the Malikiyya will make this before dua in Fajr before ruku', not after ruku'. The Hanafiyya say في النوازل فقط. I mean, they say that you only do it when there's a lot of problems. I mean, if the community that you're living in or the Muslims are going through a very big hardship, then you do it. And the Hanabila say you do it in Nawazil in all prayers except Jumu'ah. So in all prayers except Salat al-Jum'ah, then so the Hanafiya and the Hanabila, when it comes to doing qunut in Fajr, which is dua in Fajr, they say you only do it when the community that you're living in are going through a very big hardship. So you make dua. The Shafi'i and the Malikiyya say it's open. The Shafi'i do it after ruku', and the Malikiyya do it before ruku'. But that's a difference of opinion amongst them. So whether you pray Fajr, again, it doesn't. If you follow the Shafi'i madhab, then you'll make dua, and if you follow the Hanafi or Hanbali, then you won't make dua, unless you believe that the Muslims are going through a huge hardship, and then in that case, the dua would be specified towards the hardship that is happening or the misfortune.
How come qunut is specified for Fajr? What about other prayers?
Yeah, it's only for Fajr, because there are certain hadith that were narrated that the Prophet ﷺ did it during Fajr, and the way it was understood, some of them understood it. Shafi'i and the Maliki understood that it's you always do it, and then the rest of them understood, like the Hanafi and the Hanabila, and said no, only during difficult times. Yeah.
You also say that Hanabila said any time except for Salat al-Jum'ah.
Yeah, no. When there's a hardship, that you do in all 5 prayers except Jumu'ah.
Okay, but still based on haraj.
Yeah, also based on haraj and difficulty. Hanafiya say in all prayers, including Jumu'ah, if there's hardship. But that's their understanding. But actually, I think the prominent position for the Hanafiya is that only in Fajr during hardships. Yeah, so the Hanafiya say only during Fajr when there's a hardship, and the Hanabila say in all prayers except Jumu'ah during hardships. So you can see that there's a wide spectrum of opinions regarding qunut in Fajr. So if you're praying in a masjid and they do qunut, then you understand that that's the Shafi'i and the Malikiyya understanding of it. And if they don't do qunut, then that's the Hanafi and the Hanbali, and you should be fine with that as well. Yes.
We have something for Nawafil Salawat that the Prophet he would seek refuge whenever he read a verse on that.
Yeah.
Punishment. and then maybe praise Allah when there was like a verse of like bounty or something like that.
Say it again.
Do you remember that?
Yeah, so that's during Nawafil. The Prophet ﷺ, whenever he read an ayah that talked about bounty, he would ask for it. And if the ayah talked about punishment, then he would ask for refuge from it.
So
Yes,
like just keep that within the Nawafil.
yeah, that's only for Nawafil. You don't do that anywhere else. And yeah, and usually we're talking about tahajjud and qiyam al-layl. Yeah, usually we're talking about tahajjud and qiyam al-layl. So that's regarding Fajr. Now let's talk about Ramadan, because there's a difference of opinion here. So the Shafi'iyya only see that the dua of qunut and witr happens during the second half of Ramadan. So the first 15 days, if you go to masajid in Syria, you'll find that they won't make dua al-qunut in witr. They'll pray witr and they won't do dua al-qunut. And they will start doing it in the second 15 days of Ramadan. The Malikiyya don't do it at all in witr. That's their ruling. The Hanafi and the Hanabila do it in all witr of Ramadan. So that's the three different opinions regarding the qunut in Ramadan. So if you're praying witr in Ramadan, the Hanafi and the Hanbali madhab is that you start doing dua al-qunut in witr of Ramadan all through the month. The Shafi'iyya only do the second half, and the Maliki don't do it at all. And it's just, again, based on certain evidence and how they understood it and how they dealt with certain evidence. So those are the two sunnahs that exist for the Shafi'iyya. And forgetting either of these things for the Shafi'iyya would mean that you would need to do sujood as-sahw. But doing sujood as-sahw at the end is still a sunnah anyway. So you're not in problem. Yeah.
What about the qunut in witr other than Ramadan?
That's because you see these ones are in jama'ah. We're talking about jama'ah. In fard you can do it anytime you want. Like qunut in every witr, every night of your life is open. But this is talking about qunut in jama'ah, specifically specifying when done in congregation. Without congregation is a different thing. All right. So these are the sunan of salah for the Shafi'iyya. Only two.
What do you mean by watr here?
Huh?
What do you mean by watr here? What's what? Shaf' wal watr?
Yeah. So salat al-witr. Yeah. Okay. So now the second part is hay'at as-salah. And I told you hay'at as-salah is basically what the Hanafiya and the Hanabila and the Maliki call sunan. What they call the sunnah of salah. So this equals sunan as-salah, meaning something that if you leave, you don't have to do anything because it's an additional thing you do. And if you do it, you get ajr. But if you leave it, whether on purpose or forgetfulness, it doesn't make a difference to your prayer, right? وَهِيَاتُهَا 15 خصلة, and there are 15 hay'a for salah for the Shafi'iyya. رفع اليدين عند تكبيرة الإحرام وعند الركوع والرفع منهم. So raising hands during takbirat al-ihram, during takbirat al-ihram, and for ruku' and for al-rafa' min al-ruku'. So for the Shafi'iyya, it's a hay'a, or what we would call a sunnah in our general way of understanding things. Raising the hands, hadhw al-mankibayn. For the Shafi'iyya, it is parallel to the shoulders. So the Imam Shafi'i will make takbir, and so does Imam Ahmad and Imam Malik, like this, right where the shoulders are. Abu Hanifa is the one who does it up here beside the ears or beside the head, right? And the sujood is accordingly. That's the easiest way to understand it. So the Shafi'i puts his hands like this for takbir, and then that's where the hands go when you do make sujood. Exact same place. For the Hanafi, it's up here, and that's exactly where he puts his hands when he makes sujood. So wherever you put your hands during takbir is where you put your hands during sujood for the madhahib, at least. For the Hanafi, has it a bit higher up. It's hadwa ra'sihi or hadwa udhunayhi. It's right beside the ears or the head. And then the Imam Shafi'i is hadwa al-mankibayn, where the highest finger is on the same parallel of the lobe of the ear, right, and it's in front of the shoulders. And this is what the Imam Shafi'i came up with, and people followed him on that opinion. Besides Abu Hanifa before, who said it's up there. Abu Hanifa only does it once during prayer up. So once Abdullah ibn Mubarak and Abu Hanifa were praying beside each other. So Abdullah ibn Mubarak would do the Shafi'i way or the Hanbali way, which is he does it like this, and then when for ruku' he does it again, and then for rafa he does it again. Abu Hanifa just does it once. So Abu Hanifa turned to him and said, it seemed like you were flapping your wings a lot during prayer. Abdullah ibn Mubarak said, I felt like you were going to fly when you did this one. Mashallah, you were going to blow me away with all the air that you could with your takbir, and they were just joking together because they do it a bit differently. Rahimahullah ajma'in. And this is how khilaf is supposed to be dealt with on issues like this. These are very simple issues. These are just details of movements during prayers. They can be done differently, and it's not a matter of it's not a matter that is worth differing upon or fighting over or causing any level of hatred or division. So for the Shafi'i, 3 times are the sunnah. For takbirat al-ihram, for ruku', and then for rafa' min al-ruku'. You do it 3 times. Those are the hay'ah. Okay. وضع اليمين على الشمال, and then putting the right hand over the left hand during salah. Okay. Right over left during standing, right? And there are a lot of so what do you guys know about this? Where do the Shafi'iyya put it? So the Shafi'iyya put it تحت الصدر, right? Over here, right under the chest. So this is where the Shafi'iyya. Now you're holding the arm, right? So this is where the arm begins, and this is where the arm ends. So anywhere here is fine. So like this, like this, like this, like this. Don't hold on to your elbow. That's the only thing you shouldn't do. But everything else is fine, right? So تحت الصدر, like this, this, this. It's under the sadr for the imam, for the Shafi'iyya. Okay. For the Hanafiyya, تحت السرة. So under the navel. For the Hanafiyya, it's down here. That's how they do salah. For the Hanabila, both opinions were narrated from Imam Ahmad. For the Hanabila, both opinions exist in the madhab al-Hanbali. So this is an opinion that exists, has evidence that certain Hanabila scholars will defend, and this also exists in the Hanbali madhab as well. For the Malikiyya, they have two opinions. One opinion is تحت الصدر, and the other opinion is isbal. So you will see the Malikiyya sometimes, if you watch the Libyan Tarawih, you'll find that the Imam will be standing like this and reading. And that is an opinion that's acceptable. But the Malikiyya have 2 opinions in their madhab. One is isbal, not putting your hand at all, and another one is تحت الصدر, right under just like the Shafi'iyya. Yeah? Shafi'iyya تحت الصدر, Hanafiyya under the surah, and the Hanabila either way, this or that. All right? Should I write that down, or you guys don't need to know all that? Just as long as you understand that there are 3 different ways: under the sadr, under the surah, or isbal. All 3 have evidence to support them. All 3 exist within the madhab. The Shafi'iyya is under the sadr, meaning for the Shafi'i, it's under the chest right over here, and you start from this point over there. Yes.
Do any include like all the chest?
So the Hanabila specifically differed on defining under or on the chest. Like they talked about the concept of the chest because they have both opinions. So when they talked about the chest, they talked about, is it under it immediately? Is it right at so this is where the sternum ends, we can put it up there, or do you do it under it? So they differed a bit on that. So, but again, it's...
was it based on the same hadith, like maybe just on a sadr?
Yeah. Exactly. So it's just the interpretation, and this is mutaakhiri al-Hanabila, and these are the later Hanabila that talked about it being up a bit higher. But again, I remember, I recall, I know an incident where a bunch of young men were arguing. Is it here? Is it here? Is it here? Is it here? Is it down? So they came to the Shaykh. So he told them, put your hands in your pockets, but keep your heart with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? So of course, obviously, it's important to know the different shari'at. But the moment these hayat, they're called hayat, when it comes, or these sunan, or these additional recommended actions, become more important than fara'id, or essential parts of prayer, which is the actual connection you have with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or the brotherhood you have with your Muslim with your Muslim counterparts, then maybe you should bring it down a notch. But I think it's important. I think if these things are presented with the diversity that they have, then everyone can calm down. They basically have more than one way of doing things. Okay.
There's a controversy or difference is, do you hold it like this, or fingers on the side? Yeah,
I get into all. I've gotten deep enough with the. But yes, like you said, there's different opinion. Do we hold it like this? Do we hold what do we do? So really do whatever you want to do.
But it is always the arm.
Yeah, of course. So it's the arm from here to basically before the elbow. Any part here is acceptable, without trying to go into too much detail because it becomes very, very, very tiring after that. Okay, at-tawajjuh. And that is something specific for for Imam al-Shafi'i. Meaning all the other madhahib will call this dua al-istiftah. The dua, supplication of the beginning of the prayer. What do you say? What do we say? Subhanak Allah bihamdik. Subhanak Allahumma bihamdik wa tabarak asmuk wa ta'ala jadduk wa la ilaha ghayruk, which is what most of the, but for Imam al-Shafi'i it's called tawajjuh because it's the hadith wajjahtu wajhi. Does anyone know the hadith? وجهت وجهي الذي فطر السماوات والأرض حنيفا وما أنا من المشركين إن صلاتي ونسكي ومحياي ومماتي لله رب العالمين لا شريك له وبذلك أمرت وأنا أول المسلمين. So that's what Imam al-Shafi'i says at the beginning. But again, this is a hay'ah, so it's a sunnah. So if you do it, yes.
Isn't it an ayah?
Yeah, so it's not really an ayah, it's a compilation of a few ayat put together and then said in a certain way, right? So, but it's not exactly, it's not word for word an ayah, but it's also, there's a hadith narrated by Imam Muslim that the Prophet ﷺ would say that, and that's the hadith that he took, Imam Shafi'i took to be stronger, and he added, he put as sunnah for salah. However, on the other hand, the other scholars took Subhanak Allahumma bihamdika as ayah, but again, it's just as long as you make a dua of istiftah, regardless of what you would do. But for the Shafi'i, for you to actually fulfill the sunnah, he requires you to read the whole thing. Like the way he sees it, you have to read the whole dua, which is a bit long. Like I said, it's a few verses. All right, one more, and then we'll let. Okay, we have 5 minutes. Okay, we still have 5 minutes. Al-isti'adha. So saying a'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim before you start reading Surah Al-Fatiha. And so that's another hay'ah. After that, al-jahru wal-israr. Al-jahr means reading out loud, israr meaning reading under your breath, reading through whispers. So al-jahru fi mawdi'ihi wal-israru fi mawdi'ihi. So reading in a loud voice in the prayers that require loud voices, like openly, like Maghrib, Isha and Fajr, and then doing it secretly or under your breath during Dhuhr and Asr. Okay, so these are sunnahs for the Imam al-Shafi'i. So if you don't do it like that, your prayer is fine. So if you stand up one day and recite during Dhuhr and out loud, then your prayer is valid. You've khalafta as-sunnah, meaning you've contradicted the sunnah. You've done something that you knew is not the sunnah, so you lose hasanat for that, but your prayer is still valid. And the same thing goes for Maghrib and Isha and Fajr, reading in a low voice. However, there are a respectful number of scholars who said that if you're praying a jahr salah, like a salah that is read out loud on your own, then you're allowed to do it under your breath. Does that make sense? So you should, when you're reading Fajr or Maghrib or Isha at home, you should do in jahr, but there's a respectful number of scholars who allow you to recite it under your breath if you're doing it alone at home. Or you're doing it alone, there's no one with you. But the moment someone comes and taps you and is praying with you, then you should read out loud. That's the sunnah. Okay.
When you say you lose hasanat, you mean do you not gain hasanat?
You don't get as much hasanat that you would have gotten had you done it.
Lose hasanat that you already have.
Yeah, well, I don't think you can't lose hasanat. Once he gives it to you, he doesn't take it back, subhanahu wa ta'ala. So once he's granted it to you, you never lose it, but you lose your opportunity, what I mean, to get more hasanat. After that, at-ta'meen, which is saying ameen. So it's a sunnah for you to say ameen after the imam, and the imam, sunnah for the imam to say ameen as well. With difference of opinion among scholars, of course, but the imam can say ameen as well, and I think that's a bit more likely as far as opinion goes. Okay. وَقِرَاءَةُ السُّورَةِ بَعْدَ الْفَاتِحَةِ. And then a surah after Fatiha. So after Surah Al-Fatiha, if you read a surah, that is a sunnah. So if you don't, then there's nothing for you to do in your prayer. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to sujood sahu, you don't have to go back, you don't have to do anything at all. But you should do it. Again, if you choose not to, then khalafta sunnah. You've contradicted. You went against the sunnah. So you should also always. And when are you supposed to read the surahs after Fatiha? In the first 2 rak'ah of every prayer. So even if it's a 2 rak'ah prayer, then you read the surah in both rak'ahs. So every first 2 rak'ahs you pray always will have a surah in it. Anything after 2 rak'ah in a fard prayer, you don't have to read. The sunnah is not to read a surah after Al-Fatiha. Okay?
So when you read, you have to move your lips?
Yeah, so when you're reading under your breath, if you're asking me about the israr, yes, you have to read in a voice only you can hear, or specifically you can hear. So, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. The Sahaba said we would know what the Prophet ﷺ was reading from min ittirabi lihyatihi. They could see his lihya moving, and they could hear the huruf that are called in Islamic, in tajweed terminology, hams. The huruf of hams. Huruf of hams are the letters that are based on air, like they're air letters. They're not vocal letters. I'll give you an example. Is just air. The vocal doesn't. Put your hand here. All right, put your hand here. Say adh. Do you hear something vibrating? Say ath. Difference or no difference? Let's try one more. Say as. See the difference? So when it vibrates, that's a vocal letter. That's a vocal box letter. And when it's not vibrating, that's a airborne letter, or based on the movement of air. So the letters that are based on air, you will always hear them even if you're not reading out loud, right? So you can hear the ish, ish, you can hear all those letters, so you have an idea. So they would know sometimes that he was reading sallallahu alaihi wasallam from those letters that they could still hear, because he wasn't reading the other letters out loud for them to hear. Does that make sense? So you can't, this is not reading. It doesn't count. In your brain, doesn't count. Everyone who does Quran here in the halaqah knows. It doesn't count for Quran halaqah for it to count for prayer. You have to be saying something, you have to be able to hear yourself on what you're saying. Okay, we'll just do one more. What takbirat? Because this is important. I'll just tell you something about this and then you can go. وَالتَّكْبِيرَاتُ عِنْدَ الرَّفْعِ وَالْخَفْضِ. And saying takbir when you're standing up, during movements and going up and down. وَقَوْلُ سَمِعَ اللَّهُ لِمَنْ حَمِدَهُ رَبَّنَا وَلَكَ الْحَمْدُ. And then saying سَمِعَ اللَّهُ لِمَنْ حَمِدَهُ. وَالتَّسْبِيحُ فِي الرُّكُوعِ وَالسُّجُودِ. And tasbih during ruku', for ruku' and sujood. These are all sunnah for the Shafi'iyah. These are all sunan for Imam al-Shafi'i. However, all three, and for the Jamhur of the scholars, however, they are wajib for the Hanabila. And that's why it becomes a bit difficult when if you follow strictly the Hanbali madhab for salah, then it becomes a bit difficult, because these three become wajibat. Meaning, if you leave them on purpose, you lose your prayer. And if you don't do them by forgetfulness, you have to repeat. You have to do sujood sahu at the end of prayer, and there's a lot of restrictions regarding these three things during prayer, because the Hanabila give them a higher status, right? And the rest of the scholars see these three things to be sunnah. So if you don't do them at all, then you're fine, and if you do them, then you get ajr, and that's why there's less restrictions. Anything that is recommended, that is lower on the priority scale, has less restrictions and rulings regarding it, because it's something that is added anyway, so we don't need too many restrictions. If you take something and put it higher on the priority scale, then suddenly there's more rulings and regulations and restrictions regarding it. So the Hanabila, who see these three things to be wajibat, have more restrictions regarding them. Meaning when you need to say the takbir, and when you have to say Sami Allahu liman hamida, and how many tasbih you have to do in ruku', which makes it a bit more difficult than the prominent position of the Jamhur that see all three to be sunnah. Is that clear? For the Shafi'i, if you don't say takbir at all, just go down, come up, you don't say Allahu Akbar at all, then you're fine. For Imam Ahmad, if you do this on purpose, you'll lose your prayer. That makes sense? That's why it becomes a bit more difficult.
Even in
Jama'ah, or if it doesn't make a difference.
No, so the
yeah, exactly. So it doesn't make a difference. And during sujood, if you make a sujood and you don't say tasbih, for the Imam Shafi'i, your prayer is still valid. For Imam Ahmad, if you did it on purpose, then no. And that's where things become a bit more difficult.
I thought that for some of the Hanabila, if you're praying behind Imam, because the qira'ah of the Imam counts for the ma'moon.
Yeah. So, and then within the Hanbali madhab, those who see that everything the Imam says makes up for what the ma'moom says, then you don't have to do it. But that's not the prominent position that they carry. Yeah, so the problem is that only when it comes to the Fatiha and that applies. But for the rest of the things, you have to do it on your own. Again, that's a difference of opinion within the Hanbali madhab itself that takes a lot of study. But I just want to make sure that understand that these are sunnah for the Jamhur, Shafi'i, and Muslim, and then only the Hanabila see them as far. So if one person tells you, no, if you don't say takbir, then you should do sujood sahu. If you forget it, then you know that that's the Hanbali opinion on that. The Jamhur don't see it because they see it to be sunnah to begin with. So we'll stop with that, inshallah. Next time we'll continue. We'll finish up the sunan, and then we'll continue after that, inshallah. Yes, go ahead.
Is there any minimum requirement for how many ayahs you're supposed to recite after the Fatiha?
So it has to be as long as. So first of all, it's a sunnah, right? Yeah. So it's already it is a sunnah. So if you don't do it at all, you're fine. But if you're asking what would fulfill the criteria of you reading, something that is equivalent to the shortest ayah in the Quran, which is wal asr. So once I remember I heard a story told to me by he said he met someone in India whose name was an ayah you could read in a rak'ah. Right? So he met someone whose name was عِبَادُ الرَّحْمَنِ الَّذِينَ يَمْشُونَ عَلَى الْأَرْضِ هَوْنًا. And if you were to read that after Fatiha, then you would get the ajr of qira'ah, because that's longer than wal asr, right? Wal asr is the shortest ayah in the Quran. So anything equivalent to that, as long as the meaning isn't contradicting Islam altogether, then you should be okay, inshallah. Does that answer your question? Okay, جزاكم الله خير. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك. أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Inshallah next week